how social media is radicalizing your thinking. Social media sends you exactly what you want to see. So if you're searching for something about a specific person, it's going to show you everything you want about that person. Now, the more you ask it questions and dig deeper into a specific element, the more of that side it's going to show you. And it's going to omit all of the other information that you're not searching for. And so this is how social media can be used to radicalize somebody who is not taking care of their mental health. Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sgt Q, and with me today is Doc Jess.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah.
You had surgery, you were out for a while, and then
Yes.
you had a death in the family, so you were
Yes.
gone even longer.
Yes.
I think it's been a month or so since we've been together on a show.
Since before the surgery, so over 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
How are you doing? I know the audience has been wondering.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I hit my 6-week mark, so I could take my neck collar brace off. I had to wear that everywhere I went for 6 weeks. It was mortifying and humbling, but I'm healing really well.
I was so looking forward to having you here with that thing.
I'm sure you were. Sure. But oh my gosh, I loved watching your wife fill in. She did a great job, and
she hated every minute of it.
I know she did. Yes.
She couldn't wait for you to get back.
I do. I love it. I loved every bit of it. I was forced to slow down and heal, and I healed beautifully. I had a ton of people praying for me. I really took care of my body before the surgery to do everything I could in my power, right? We talk about control the controllables. And so I really prepared my body for the surgery. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of toughed through the pain afterwards and got up and started walking around and moving just a couple hours after coming out of surgery, because I did do some reading and said the quicker you get up and moving, the quicker your body starts healing itself. So it was a painful surgery, and I feel so much better.
So some people don't know what the surgery was. So tell us what you had done.
I had C5 through C7 in my cervical spine. The discs were herniated so much they were penetrating into my spinal cord. So I was at really high risk for a spinal cord injury, which could be paralyzed. I could have been paralyzed with just a small fall, they said. So it was a little bit more of an urgent surgery. It was what they said a 20-year injury. They said something major happened 20 years ago, and 20 years ago to that day at that doctor's visit, I was in Iraq, and just being within close combat to mortars and IEDs, getting knocked out a couple times, and then to perpetuate that, the Kevlar, the flak vest, the full battle rattle all day, every day, constantly just really, I guess, damaged some things in my cervical spine. And so...
and what people don't realize is you wear all that stuff, but it's not like you're sitting at a desk. You're hiking with that stuff. You are engaging the enemy. You are diving to the dirt with that full gear on. Mm-hmm. When incoming mortars, you hit the deck and you've got all of that. So you've got all your weight plus the weight of all your gear compacting as you hit the ground. Yeah. And I remember there were a couple of times where I about knocked the wind out of myself, hitting the ground so hard. And, getting, we used to call them stingers, but it's where you kind of see stars for a minute. Uh-huh. You hit so hard. Yeah. I remember those types of things happen. Yeah. So it does put a lot of wear and tear on your body.
So the good news is I didn't have to pay a dime. The VA covered it all, and I got outsourced to Harborview, which is Trauma One. I had a really great neurosurgeon, and I couldn't have asked for, a better situation for a bad situation. So
yeah, I'm really impressed. It didn't mess with your vocal cords, because that's one of the things that could be a side effect. Because if you guys don't know how this works, they have to go in through the front of the throat here. You can see it's a little bit of a scar there still. So they have to go in that way to do the work. So through the esophagus and past the vocal cords. Yeah. And sometimes as they're doing work, those things can be damaged. So It was really good. How's it been eating? Did you have to change anything you were eating for a few days? Or?
Yeah, I pretty much didn't eat anything for 4 or 5 days. It hurts so bad to swallow. Yeah.
Like the worst sore throat in the world, right?
The worst sore throat in the world. Yeah, it was rough. 4 or 5 days, I was like, what did I get myself into? And then like halfway through day 4, going into day 5, I I hit a turning point. I was like, okay, I can do this. But they really downplayed the surgery to my husband and I. He loves telling the story. It was a lot more invasive, and when people would say, hey, how you feeling? And I finally got the x-rays of what they put a titanium plate with titanium screws in my cervical. And I didn't know they were doing that. And it looked like the x-ray, the screws looked like screws I would find on the corner of my husband's garage.
Yeah, they're stainless steel. Yeah.
I was like, so when you ask me how I'm feeling, this is my answer now. I feel like I have titanium plate and screws in my neck. That's what it feels like. Okay, that makes more sense. So, yeah, I feel great now. I'm turning my neck more, and I start physical therapy soon. So, all looking good. Great.
All right, Jess. Well, it's good to have you back in studio. Our new studio here. We're changing things up, as you guys probably will notice. We've changed a little bit of the setup here. It was in a different direction, so we're going to be changing things from time to time, just seeing how things work out.
Change is good.
It is good. It is sometimes. Sometimes it's good.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a struggle. And it's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Right now, the whole world is struggling. We're seeing it not just here in America, but what's happened here in America has rippled through all across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw a similar thing happen with COVID, how it rippled out and affected everybody. And this death with Charlie Kirk being murdered has rippled not just throughout our country, but throughout multiple countries. And here in America, we had the stabbing on the train of the young Ukrainian woman. And then we had the school shooting that happened, I believe, in Colorado. And then Charlie Kirk's assassination that was live streamed across the world. So a lot of times when we see these, when we were kids or even young adults, the news would show these things, but those things were edited out. And it was a few days after, and they would show little bits and pieces of it, but they'd never show what actually happened. But because of social media, because everybody now has a phone and can post that stuff, it comes out immediately. So the stuff that happened in the train was CCTV footage that we got released immediately. And Charlie Kirk being assassinated, it happened live stream. Like he was in the middle of a speech, and that's what happened. And it just flew across the internet like wildfire. And so everybody now is experiencing this traumatic event.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening. They are experiencing it, all of us together as one. And so you had mentioned in pre-show how people have been contacting you.
Yeah, so in my process of unpacking what happened, I follow several mental health professionals on different social media platforms, and a couple of them came out and said, hey, if you are feeling this sort of way or you witnessed anything, the earlier you get in to see professional or unpack these things, the less potential you have for struggling in the future with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And I think that's the important thing here to talk about a little bit is the difference between PTS and PTSD.
Yeah, so let's define that so people understand.
Yeah, so PTS is post-traumatic stress, right? Anytime anything traumatic happens, a death, a murder, an assassination, a stab, that's non-negotiable, a traumatic event. And if you witnessed it or heard firsthand about it in the DSM, that qualifies as a traumatic event. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have some kind of stress surrounding post-stress surrounding that traumatic event. So maybe flashbacks or intrusive thoughts or hypervigilance, all these different things.
Or rumination.
Rumination, yes. They're very... Explain what rumination is.
Rumination is basically an intrusive thought that comes in, and instead of just saying, okay, this is the thought, feeling, or emotion, recognizing it and letting it go, you hold on to it. And then you kind of go deep into this rabbit hole of like all these other bad things that could happen or may happen or will happen. And you just end up in this toilet bowl of thoughts. That's the rumination. And it starts with that thought. When you think about that thought so much, then it starts to deteriorate your mental health.
Perfect. Yes. And so these are all very normal reactions and responses to witnessing or being very close to a trauma like that's been happening. Mm-hmm. And so just first and foremost, normalizing that's post-traumatic stress, and that's normal, and everybody experiences that. When we cross into disorder, right, is when it then, over a period of time, begins to negatively affect your life past a month. And so a lot of people kind of a lot of professionals and researchers. Is it a month? Is it 6 months? If they're still really bothering you after a month, definitely get in. But I would say seek some professional counseling or some tools that we can give you to start processing these things so it doesn't exacerbate into a disorder.
And the other thing you can do, getting into a counselor can be difficult.
Yeah.
But we're going to share with you guys today how you can have conversations with your friends that will actually be beneficial to your mental health and not deteriorate. So instead of going on that rumination cycle, how you can have productive conversations with your friends. That way, you not only boosting your mental health, but theirs as well. And so we're going to talk about that, what that looks like.
And the important word there that he says, productive. And I think your opening is very important to understand that some conversation can be unproductive and damaging.
Yeah, and let's get into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Because people don't just wake up one day and become radicalized. This happens over a period of time. And with the internet and access to information, and especially now with the way that they design the algorithms to show you what you want to see, it happens a lot faster and ends up being a lot more violent. So here's the example. A few months ago, it was springtime, and I needed to get a new weed whacker. I got a big yard. The goats can't get all of it. So I need a weed whacker. And so I started looking for weed whackers. I wanted something DeWalt, battery power, because I don't need to do a lot. Just little. I don't want to mess with gas anymore. I already have DeWalt tools. So I start researching. This is on Google. Well, a few minutes later on Facebook, what am I getting?
I'm laughing inside right now because now my freaking phone is going to be coming up with a weed whacker and DeWalt, and I don't care about it. So, yes.
I started getting ads on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok about all these weed whacker related things. My algorithm is filled with mental health stuff.
Yeah.
I'm always looking at mental health research and things, but now it starts changing to all these weed whackers because all these advertisers are like, oh, hey, you want weed whackers? We're going to show you a lot more of this. Yeah. I'm getting suggested posts from Amazon on here's weed whacker and lawn care tools. Now I'm getting lawn care services. So all these things that relate. And so that's one way where algorithms are good because it shows you what you want to see. And that can be helpful. But it can be harmful as well. Because when we're searching for a political affiliation or specific ideology, and you see somebody as an antithesis of your very existence because of what social media is showing you, you start to believe that this person is doing you actual harm. Even though all they're doing is speaking words, you start to believe that this is actually harming you as a person and an individual. You start to go into these articles or maybe these news outlets or websites that are a little bit radical, which leaves you open for more radicalization, more radical ideas. And when people say things like, oh, this person should just be shot, or we need to get rid of them, when you have political people on stage saying, hey, if you see somebody of the opposing party at a restaurant, you just get in their face, like Maxine Waters. She classically did this during the election. If you see a Trump supporter, you see a MAGA, you go in the restaurant and you get in their face and you kick them out of there and and just pushing this violence onto people. And the more of that you expose yourself to, the more of that you're going to see. And that's where we see these young, impressionable minds be inundated with this. They ruminate on it, and then we end up with things like what we see right now. So what came up for you, Jess, as I was talking about that? I watched your body change and your...
Yeah, well, just the amount of... Just seeing over time, now that I'm in my 40s, right, I'm in that very small window of seeing the progression of internet, social media, right? We grew up with nothing, and we've been a part of this progressive... And so we've seen just this trajectory. And when you mention the news outlets, and I have seen so much false information and misinterpretation of certain quotes or things like that taken out of context, and how quickly even I at times have taken something, haven't done my due diligence to research it, and because it made me feel a certain emotion, I feel justified and I repeat because I want justice, and that's a bad thing. And so I'm going to speak against it. So maybe my intentions are okay, but I needed to do the fact checking myself.
Yeah, and a lot of times when people say, "Oh, well, I researched this on the internet," what they're doing is they're looking for what's called confirmation bias.
Yes.
So they're not actually researching it. What they're doing is they're putting stuff into the internet saying, "Show me 10 reasons why I'm right about this thing."
Well, and that's how AI now is set up. You have to go into AI and say, please, like, you must disagree with me if the evidence shows I'm wrong. Like, I've had to go into my AI and put that in, like, the back end stuff because I was like, man, this really makes me feel good. Like, yeah, you're really doing it. And I'm like, this is dangerous.
It is, because it boosts your serotonin level, and it's not reality.
Well, and it feeds my ego. And, like, I would be a liar if I said it didn't, right? Like, it feeds your ego. Like, oh, I'm onto something. Like, and that's where one of my sayings that I love is you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know these algorithms work this way, you're going to fall victim to it. But I hope that if just one person watches this and is like, oh, I didn't realize that algorithms work that way, I'm going to maybe be more intentional to seek all sides. I don't know.
And here's the thing. America, more than probably any other country, I think has a high proclivity of mental health disorders because everybody is self-diagnosing. Because they see something on WebMD, on TV, they see something trending on TikTok. And so now everybody I know is ADHD.
Yeah.
Or everybody I know has OCD. Yeah. Or everybody I know has XYZ, right? Whatever.
Everybody's ex-spouse is narcissistic.
Yes. So only 3% of the population statistically is narcissistic, but 95% of women say they've dated a narcissist.
Yeah.
So it's like the math ain't math in that. No. So this confirmation bias that we look for, this is how people can become radicalized, because when you mix in people who are struggling with mental health and you mix in this ideology search on the internet, and when those two things combined, we see radicalization happen so fast. Because now people just want to jump on a bandwagon, be part of something, and become radicalized. Here's what I thought was really strange. I'm an observer of people, and here's a good example of this. You see people freak out all the time, and they have these overreactions to something that is kind of benign that everybody else wouldn't have a problem. Well, we see that, and when it's happening and they feel like they're the victim, then they justify it. But when they do that to somebody else, then they try to downplay it.
That's narcissism.
So we see this on a huge scale. Yeah. And here's the example right now. You remember the George Floyd when he was ODing and the cops stood on him and killed him because he's ODing and he can't breathe now because the guy's kneeling on him. George Floyd was not a good guy. Yeah. He was a multiple convicted felon. He had several assault and kidnapping and rape charges against him currently when he was being arrested. So it's not like this guy was a great guy, but there's a radicalization of the left who touted him as being some sort of hero. And then you saw people on the right, on the other extreme. We're not talking about moderates here. We're talking about extremists who were making fun of George Floyd and saying he got what he deserved and saying all these derogatory things. Well, what did the left do? The moderate left said, hey, that's not right. We don't necessarily agree with the extreme left, but what you're doing is not right. And so they started doxing these people. They started posting things on their businesses, getting them fired. And tons of people got fired for that. As they should.
As they should.
You should not. There should be consequences to making fun of somebody dying. I don't care how bad of a person it is. You shouldn't be able to do that and be in polite society. Now, if you're in war and combat, that stuff happens because you have to stay mentally fit and you have to see the enemy as subhuman. But we're not in war here. This culture war that people think that we're in, this is not a real war. And so dehumanizing people doesn't help the situation. It makes it worse. And so the liberal left was very justified in what they were doing, getting these people terminated. And I agree with them. But now we see on the other side of that. Yeah. You see hundreds, if not thousands of people, thousands, almost tens of thousands now, being terminated because they were making fun of Charlie Kirk's assassination. They were saying derogatory things and celebrating it. And it was absolutely horrible. And now the right said, hey, the moderate right said, hey, that's not right. You can't do that. And so they did the exact same thing that the left had done, where they're now calling employers, leaving reviews, people are getting terminated. Elon Musk fired 2,000 40,000 people in one day.
I saw that, but I didn't do the research to make sure it was true.
So here's what happens. One of the staffers there made a celebration post about Charlie Kirk being assassinated, and it went viral. And so I don't know exactly why he terminated 2,000 people, but my guess is that some of them had a part in sharing that. And I'm sure other people there who were supposed to be the safeguards to not let that stuff get through, it got through. Mm-hmm. So whoever the compliance department was, they probably, because you said all the full departments were wiped out. So I'm a business owner. I would look at that, and for me, it's a risk management situation. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, you allowed this type of stuff to get through, and not just get through, but then go viral. So it's not like you missed it. Yeah. You saw this thing taking off, and you did nothing to stop it, and he just eliminated that whole department. They didn't go into detail who got fired, why they got fired, what departments. But as a business owner, I can look through that lens and say, I know exactly what he did. So the people who probably liked, shared, and lit that thing off, they got terminated. Probably from all different departments.
Sure. Yeah.
But the whole departments that got taken out were probably the ones who were in charge of mitigating that risk of that stuff happening. Right. And that's just one employer. Yeah. I looked, there are 2 competing websites right now that are gathering all the information. Self-reported. So if you see somebody putting something derogatory online or celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, you screenshot it and you send it in. It cannot be anonymous. You have to say, hey, I found this and I'm putting it out.
Yeah.
And they're publishing that on this website now.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think it's being pretty fair, because if you find yourself there, there is an arbitration where you can go and say, hey, this wasn't me, or this is what I said, or this was out of context, or whatever. Okay. And there's a way for you to rebuttal that. But those are being published right now. 2 different websites are doing that. And they've got over 40,000 submissions so far in just the last few days. So as I told everybody this, and you can go back and you can look almost every episode I talk about this. I said that the pendulum has swung way far to the left and it reached a tipping point, and now it's coming back the other way. And our job as a responsible middle of the country is to slow it down, not speed it up. Now, I've never met Charlie Kirk, but I've watched a lot of his videos. I know what he stands for. And he would never, ever condone anybody doing violence on his behalf for his death. He would never condone that. He would never, ever do that. And here's the thing. The guy who shot and killed him, if he truly repented in his heart and asked Jesus for forgiveness, Charlie Kirk would be one of the first people there to welcome the guy back in. That's what Christianity is about. And so I don't want people who are Christians, who are in the middle, who are moderates, to become radicalized. Because now you're seeing this stuff happening to Charlie Kirk. This has been happening to Christians for decades over in West Africa, on the Ivory Coast, where entire villages of Christians are completely wiped out. And it doesn't even make a blip on the radar. So this stuff has been happening. So my hope is that you don't get sucked into this rabbit hole of rumination, and you start now looking for reasons to hate other people because you feel that your faith was attacked, which it absolutely was. You're absolutely right. But we shouldn't be seeking revenge. No. What we should be seeking is to bring them to repentance. And you can't do that if you have hate and revenge in your heart. And so that's a self-check.
I love that the verse that was put on my heart through this, for my own checking of my heart, is when Paul in Ephesians 4 says, therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Not when you feel like it, not when people deserve it. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there's one body, one Spirit, just as you have been called to one glorious hope for the future. And then just a little bit later, it says in chapter 4, verse 31, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. And this is just a good reminder as I go through my process and unfriend people and ask people to politely unfriend me if that's their prerogative. I'm still called to be tenderhearted and merciful, making allowances for others' faults. But it also says, for there is one body and one spirit. There is one Lord. And so I'm okay to be radical about my beliefs in in the truth of that as well. And so not in a radical, hateful, or unpeaceful way, but more of a fire ignited in me to stand up more for what I believe and not cower.
And so one of the things you said there, and I see a lot of people doing exactly what you just said, where it's like, okay, well, if you're going to celebrate this, if you're going to do this, just unfriend me right now. I don't want anything to do with it. But that actually makes the problem worse because now we are creating that divide. And that person now, if all those people in their life that believe on the other side distance themselves and they say, well, you see, I was right. Because all these other people on the other side are telling me that I'm right and I'm correct and I have these convictions. And there's no voice from the other side. And so I would really challenge you. I mean, you got to take care of your mental health, but I'd really challenge you not to do those types of things. And right now, the flame is hot and everything is tumultuous. It's up here.
Mm-hmm.
But as the weeks and months start to subside, we're going to have an opportunity to speak into those lives. And I'm telling you this, Jess, not because I had this prepared, but this is what I feel the Holy Spirit's putting on my heart. So I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me as well.
Yeah.
Because it's something I struggle with. I'm a warrior at heart, all the way through to my bones. And when this first happened, I didn't really know what to feel or think. I didn't really feel anything, if I'm honest. And most people say, you're weird, probably. But it didn't really hit me till several days later, where I was like, okay, well, that just happened. The whole world is going to change now. Yeah. I saw it. I said, okay, I'm really good at pattern recognition. Yeah. I said, okay, well, I didn't know it was going to happen like this, but I knew there's going to be some sort of catalyst to launch this thing back in the other direction. And it's slowly been moving, but this really put some gas on it. And now I look at this and say, right, we need to temper our spirits and slow this train down so it doesn't go far to the other side. And now you have all of these radicalized people on the right going and doing violence against these people on the left. And this tit for tat back and forth drives us further apart. And the algorithm is set up to do that. And this is just for your normal average person that's doing that too. So people who are already struggling with mental health, it makes it so much worse. Because people who struggle with mental health, delusions, paranoia, they see this as a justification of their delusions and paranoia. Like, oh, see, I knew they were out to get us. Look at what they did to Charlie Kirk. I could be next. Mm-hmm. And then they start to ruminate on that. So people who are already struggling with mental health, it's going to make those things so much worse. Yeah. Because they're going to feel now justified in those ruminations and delusions that they have. They're going to interpret everything they see now through this conspiracy theory lens. And I love a good conspiracy theory. I love them because they're fun and entertaining. But this could be very dangerous. Yeah. These types of things. And what it does is it then justifies their extreme behavior, which is what we've seen with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This guy was already struggling with mental health, obviously. Mm-hmm. He was in a very non-traditional relationship with a transgender man, woman, I don't know. I'm not sure the label. So he was already having a troubled spirit. And he saw Charlie Kirk, what he was saying, as a direct attack against him and his life and his way of living.
Well, and the mere idea that what the bullet casing says, anti-fascism, the definition of fascism is murdering or harm against somebody with a different, like there's not one neurotransmitter in my brain that can
But that's the argument, right? Because people look at this and say, well, if you could go back in time, would you kill Hitler when he was a kid? That's the argument, right? What would you do? You saw him riding his bike at 10 years old. Would you kill him because you knew what he was going to do? Right? And then that's the thing. Say, oh, well, he was going to become this next Hitler. That's what people were comparing him to. This next Hitler, this next Stalin, this next authoritarian leader that's going to suppress us. That's the ideology that he was using to justify murdering Charlie Kirk. And so now that's the argument. Is if you could go back in time, would you kill a younger version of Hitler? So that's the argument for the ideology of why people act out and do these things, because they think that, yes, I'm doing something that's probably not right, but it's for the greater good, therefore I'm justified. Because they've spent hours, days, months building this up in their brain, and nobody has been there to be that other side to say, hey, well, slow down, man. That's not cool. We don't talk it like that. We don't do those types of things. And
Well-
that goes into the conversations that I want to start us to have. That goes into the conversations that I want us to start having with our friends and family, so none of us become radicals.
But it goes back to the mere fact of the few times I've spoken out about things before I fully fact checked it, and being humble enough to retreat and say, whoop, I spoke out too soon, while at the same time watching so many things that Charlie Kirk said, wherever you're at, so many things that he said were taken out of context and a small part was quoted. And then I'm like, okay, let me go back. And I watched the whole video and it was completely taken out of context. I saw the same thing happen with President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I saw certain media outlets put little things and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I can't believe he did that. And if I just stood there, I was justified in those feelings towards him. And then I was opened up to the whole speech and I was like, oh my gosh, that's not what he was saying at all. And this is not a pro-Trump, whatever. It is what it is. It's the reality that I almost went down a way of thinking because I didn't see the whole picture. Yeah. And that is a huge danger of social media. And that's a huge danger of these algorithms feeding you what you want. And the way you're leaning already, I saw so many times Charlie Kirk say, I just want to have conversations with people so that this doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have conversations. The moment we stop talking is the moment violence begins. Like, that's quoted everywhere. And whether you detest his ideologies and his opinions or you like them, you cannot disagree with that. You can't disagree with the foundation that we need to stay in communication and talking through these things.
And we just get into this echo chamber with the internet and with social media because the way it was designed to show us more of what we're looking for. But our brains do the very same thing.
Sure.
It's called the negative bias. So our brains are already doing this. And what happens is the internet then just hyperfixates on that and really takes you really far, really fast.
Yeah.
Because when you look back in the day when you had people who were doing these acts of violence like this, they were a very recluse person. And they didn't have a lot of social interaction with people. They kind of kept to themselves. And then they do these horrific things. Well, with the internet, and it would take months and years for that to build up. But now with the internet, that time frame has shortened exponentially.
Right.
Because you have access to so much more information. So your brain already has a negative bias. Yeah. So if you already believe that this person is doing evil to you, and then you go on social media and that's all they show you because that's what you're looking for, it just is a force multiplier to psychosis. Is what we're saying.
Yeah. And if you already have underlying cluster B personality disorders or anything like that, it really is. How do I say this? Anybody who has struggled with suicidal thoughts, okay? If you know, you know.
Yep.
That moment, you can't see anything. Your brain has shut down to only see the amount of agony you're feeling inside, and the only outlet is death. That's all you can see. And research shows that with people who successfully end their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's why having that squad of people, that's why having connections outside of yourself and that thinking is so important. Because if I didn't have that, I would have ended my life several times in my lifetime. And so I know that tunnel vision is there from personal experience. I know that my brain and the enemy can play tricks on my brain to think this agony, that like literally this is all I can think of. This agony is so overwhelming, the only way out is to end. I can't think about the people it's going to hurt. I can't think about the selfishness that it's going to reveal in me. I can't think of those things in those moments. And that's why when I had my first suicidal thought moment, I went to the hospital in 2007. I had enough rational thoughts still left in me to say, this is dangerous. I got to go. Right. And then I promised my family after that, if I get to this narrow, I'm not going to reach out to you guys because it's embarrassing. I'm just going to check myself in. And so I've done that 4 times in my life. And if I didn't have that, I would have ended my life. And that's a mental illness. That's PTSD. That's post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, whatever you want to call it. But these people that make these extreme decisions, they get so narrow-minded because they don't let logic in. It's all emotional that takes over, and they can't think logically.
And here are 4. I'm going to give you guys 4 examples that are warning signs when you start to see this present in yourself or in others. So, and we're not talking about somebody on the internet who you don't know, who made a comment on a post and you don't know them, you don't have a relationship with them. Because if you try to engage them, all you're going to do is drive them further into that denial. And they're going to, now, because of pride and ego, they're going to have to stand in that position even harder. Even if you can somehow get through and they can logically say, oh, this person's right, they're never going to admit it.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. It's never going to happen. So if you think that you're going to be the savior of the world by being able to pontificate, you're incorrect. It's just not how the brain operates. When the brain is in that, you're having an argument with somebody and they are arguing back and forth, what you've done is you've engaged their amygdala. Now they're in fight or flight mode. So their cognitive abilities are reduced. They're not having rational thought. They're just thinking, I have to eliminate the threat, which is you speaking to them. So they will do whatever they can to verbally shut you down. Then they'll go to name calling you a racist, and all these other things to try and defend and deflect their position. You're never going to be able to rationalize with these people, and it's not their fault. It's because their brain is in that fight or flight mode. And when you attack them, you drive them further into that, producing more of those chemicals. So you're never going to be able to rationalize with them. It will never, ever, ever, ever happen. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Show me one argument that you've ever won with somebody on the internet where they've said, oh, you know what? You're right. I apologize. Where you didn't know this person ahead of time. I guarantee it's never happened. So here's the better thing to do. When you see that kind of stuff, just let it go by. Those comments, yep, they're terrible. If you want to do something to feel justified, screenshot it. Send it to one of those 2 websites. There you go. But engaging with that person does more damage than it does good. But here's what you can do. If you know this person, not just know them kind of, but you have a relationship with them. You work with them, you're friends with them, your family, you go to church, you have some sort of relationship with them outside of the internet.
Yeah.
Like in person,
yeah.
Like me and Jess. There's been times where we've had to hold each other accountable. It's painful, but we have to do it. This is what you can do, because you can have a conversation with them. So here are 4 warning signs that tell you, hey, I need to have a conversation with my friend, not a rando on the internet, my friend. So number 1, they're showing glee or happiness toward a tragedy, no matter what it is. They're showing happiness toward a tragedy. That is totally counterproductive to the perpetuation of our human existence, to show glee and happiness toward a tragedy, no matter what it is. So that's number 1. Number 2 is going to be uncontrolled rage online, where you see these people just flaming on the internet. And man, I was one of the best at doing this. I used to do this all the time until I learned it was actually damaging my own mental health. Mm-hmm. So that's number 2, rage on the internet. Number 3 is projection, where you blame everything else on somebody else or some ideology, where all of your problems are because the liberals do this, or all of your problems are because the Republicans do this, or all of your problems are because Charlie Kirk talks about X, Y, and Z. When you see one of your friends or family member hyperfixating on that and blaming everything on this person, this ideology, whatever that is the source of all of their problems, that's a warning sign. And the 4th thing is, if you see one of your friends becoming radicalized and moving themselves toward one of these very emotionally damaging groups that come together and become hyperfixated, hyper radical. BLM movement, when it started, I thought was awesome. I was like, this is great. This is a great movement. But you had some radicals come into there and just take over the entire movement. And now they're burning down cities. They're looting buildings. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What happened here? Because in the beginning of BLM, I was on board. I was like, yes, this is great. And then I saw all the violence and the groupthink and, hey, we're just going to go through the city and burn down all these buildings. Like, that's not helping anybody. So when you see your friend moving into that kind of ideology with these kind of groups, that's another sign. So again, the 4 signs that I want you to look for when one of your friends, you can see them struggling on the internet. The 4 things are this: public glee toward tragedy, uncontrolled rage online, projection of blame of all of their problems on one specific person or group of people, and number 4, emotional contagion, where you can see them moving toward this group of radicals. Those are the 4 things where you need to step in and say, hey, let's go have coffee, let's have a conversation. All right, Jess. So what are some of the things that we could do when we get in that conversation? Because we got to be brave and we don't want to make it worse. So I'm good at having these conversations, but I'm not good at not making them worse. I'm just pretty blunt and direct.
Yeah.
And my close friends know that, but how could I do better?
Sure. One of the best advice I can give is humility. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is one example I like to give for, right, people say, oh, speak the truth, right? Like, oh, I'm just a bluntly honest person. Sure, I've been called that as well. And for instance, when my husband's father passed away, right, when he came home, if he comes home from work, I say, hey, your dad died. I'm being honest. Like, can't argue with that. I am being honest. But there's a way to go about it, right? I'm going to say, hey, baby, come here, sit down. Oh my God, I have something really hard to tell you. I'm so sorry. Your dad passed away today. It's totally different. I'm still being honest, but the end of communication, we want one of 3 things. We want to be heard and validated. We want to reconcile or manage some kind of conflict, or we want to be united on something. Okay. So that's what communication is for. And if you don't have that as your end goal, then you're communicating. So think, how can I till the soil of this conversation so that at the end we manage some kind of conflict? I'm heard and validated. I hear them and validate them. So the end goal is productive, right? And so humility is a huge accessory to this. So I also am very passionate about parenting, and I see lots of parents out there in public damaging their children in the way they're parenting. Mm-hmm. And how do I know that? Because of my passion for parenting and because I'm a parent and I've made mistakes myself, right? If I see these parents doing something that's going to damage their kids and make them have to come see a counselor like me in their future, right? Like, my heart behind it is like, no, you don't want to do that because you're going to damage them. But if I come up to them and say, hey, you're doing it all wrong. What are you doing? Like, I'm being honest and it's truthful. And what are they going to say? Who the are you? Get away from me. If I come to you and I say, oh my gosh, I remember that stage. It was so hard. I made so many mistakes. I learned a few really great things. Would you mind if I share it with you? What are you going to say? Give me all you got.
Well, yeah, because number 1, you've done what's called force teaming, where you've now, instead of being like this, you've come alongside me and helped me to understand that I'm not alone in this.
Yes. And so I think with anybody that we care about at all, there's going to be something you can come alongside them about. And people have emotions for a reason. And like we say, all feelings are welcome, not all behaviors.
That's true. That's so true.
So humility, grace, come alongside, be gentle, be kind, tenderhearted, and remember that end goal is to manage some kind of conflict, because only 64% of conflict is actually resolved, if that. So we want to manage it.
It's actually pretty high. I was going to say.
Maybe I have it backwards. Maybe 64% is not. And 36% is. Anyways, I don't know. Fact check me. But it's better to think we want to kind of manage this conflict instead of resolve it, because resolution means both sides win. And usually when there's conflict, both sides don't win.
One of the things that it made me do is made me reflect, because I said it didn't really hit me until a couple of days after. And it really made me take inventory of what am I doing in my life? And I had a discussion with a pastor and say, what do you mean, what are you doing in your life? Like, look at all the stuff that you've done already. If you quit today, you'd have done more than most.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I don't even think about it like that.
Yeah.
You know, all the business accolades and books and all the stuff that I've done. I don't even look at it like that. I think of, man, I could do more. Mm-hmm. That's what it made me think of. It's like, what am I doing with my life? I'm actually wasting time right now. And I really did. And I was in deep prayer Wednesday night. Pastor Kevin spoke. It spoke to me. I had been I'm at 23 days of intensive prayer in the morning and night. For the last 23 days, I've been in intense prayer trying to hear from God. And on Wednesday, it all became very clear. And so what I've decided to do is shut down my business coaching. I'm not doing it anymore. It's a waste of time. Why do I want to help people make money? I want to help them make impact. So that side of my business that was successful. So those of you who've gone through my business scaling course, congratulations, because it doesn't exist anymore. This weekend was the last time I'm teaching. And all of my energy now is going into helping people with mental health. My mental health curriculum, evolved mental health. So I was running both the business scaling side and the mental health side, but more people wanted the business scaling. I want to make money than wanting mental health. And so now I'm just shutting that whole thing down. And that thing was growing. I'm getting invited to go to conferences. Like I still have 3 or 4 conferences this year that I'm going to be speaking at, but I'm not going to be talking about how to make money. I'm going to be talking how to make impact, how to take control of your own mental health, learn these skills so you don't become radicalized. So one of your family members don't become radicalized. And so that is what this whole strategy has done for me. Help me reassess where I'm at, and I can do more. God has given me an incredible gift of teaching people how to overcome trauma, that there's healing through serving God and serving their communities. And I've kind of just been sitting on it because I've been so busy helping people make money. And so I'm done with that. That ended yesterday, Saturday. It ended Saturday.
Wow.
And now everything is focused in on this mental health stuff. So I had to have a huge shift for my team out of the Philippines and said, hey, we were doing great and this is working, but we're not doing it anymore because this is where God's calling us. And so everything they were doing, they just shifted it and pushing it in this direction. So there's no doubt in my mind that we will have far greater success in this space.
Sure.
But that's one thing that did for me. So I want you guys to think, with this tragedy, we can get hung up on the negative bias and what's happening and feel like we are victims and that our faith is under attack, and all those things are true. But you can't do anything about that. But what can you do? You can do more. There's not one person out there that is too busy to have a conversation with somebody and share the gospel, to walk through trauma with somebody, to share a meal and a smile and a comforting conversation with somebody. There's nobody in the world that's too busy for that. And you literally have 2 of the best people on the planet that can teach you how to do that right here at the Mental Health Janitors. Because we want to do 3 things. We want to educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. So for the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sgt Q.
I'm Dr. Jess.
And we're out.